in our within our culture, we have many of the things that uh, I guess these I'm coming straight directly first of all from the point of view of the intergenerational carriers of the Long Story Society, and the purity of how the aspects of how they take the direct excerpts from our long story, as you call it, and applying those into a very practical way in our everyday lives, to be able to take this excerpt from this. In our language, when we say excerpt, the way we say that is take is the way, you know, that direct saying, or that's been within the text of oral tradition of how it says that in its exact uh, form of recited form, I guess, if you want, with our long story where the creator is talking to the people, and the two well, his unstabe magana, they say, the first people that he created here upon this island. That's one of the things that, of course, they talk about is we're not immigrants. We have our own story of what happened within our history of creation story. So, but anyway, it's with that we the elders, whenever they use it in the practical sense here now and today, it's always the excerpt that they've taken it from within the long story. So that I'm saying. So it's with that there was these two brothers, elders. They were both my dads, I guess, in that traditional way. The first elder, well, initially, but well, on either side, my mother's side and my father's side, that kind of thing. So on my father's side, they would be my dads in that clan structure that we have, kinship system. And then on my mother's side, they'd be my grandpas. So anyway, I went to see the two elders there, and it was quite fascinating on some of in terms of conflict resolution and different teachings that they had within that made incredible sense. Even though they seem both opinions from the older brother and the younger brother, they seemed somewhat polarized. It it seems like they were telling that with each one of the elder there, it was the absolute truth, and that's what mesmerized me about the whole thing. So I went anyway. I go to the first elder, and then I approach him with it's just personal self development of how people need to. It's like to go from a starting point, if you want. How do you develop a person oneself within utilizing that, say, the starting point of how we're going to begin from in thinking about this whole thing in a very orderly fashion. So it's with that the old man. I thought that he was going to use the most profound Cree words. In our language we call high Cree or holy Cree. Paskitwewgiswewin, they call that high Cree, holy Cree, high Cree, that kind of thing. I thought he was going to be utilizing that type of words and things. So I got my all my protective mechanisms in place, and all of the things that it's going to require for me to stay absolute total absolute focus and to understand the words, and to make sure that I get the whole story, the whole thing, the concept. So I got all ready for that, and he just breaks out into plain old country English, real plain old English, and he just spread it out. And so what I I had a real in that way I was pretty mesmerized by what he had to say, just plain old English, and it was amazing. But this is what he actually said. He said, "Oh, we all have hate. We were born with it." I just really loved that. And you can accept that. Well, at the time, he was my grandson. Well, if you can accept that, grandson, I'll tell you something about that hate. He said, you have to learn to control your hate, your own hate. That's what he said. He said, you grab your own bull by the horns. And I'm not going to grab that bull for you, grandson. You have to grab it and you control it. You control that bull yourself. That's what he said. Because if you can't control it, it just went like that. You'll always be like that. It's kind of it sticks, it ingrains in you by not placing any kind of controlling mechanism within that stabilizes you and try not to getting to blow up or to get angry, that kind of thing. So those were pretty interesting. That was a pretty interesting thing he got into, and it's just the essence of the controlling mechanism that he was talking. But he was trying to put it in the form of a very simple context for me to then be able to understand. So and then so anyway, I went home. I thought about it. I pondered for it a lot and that kind of thing. And my dad had uh, never really said that to me, but he did say, that he did kind of mention the do's and don'ts all along. But my grandpa here, he kind of put it kind of into context for me. So what did I do? I went to see his older brother because the two of them, they're almost like night and day. Like one of them, like this younger elder, was he was point blank. He was blunt. He was straightforward. He didn't beat around the bush about anything. He just sped it out in the manner that he did. So anyway, what happens is I went to his older brother, and that old man, pure white hair, Sundance Theater, he couldn't hurt a fly. He was so soft, gently spoken, old man. And that old man, after formal, formalizing my protocol, social protocol, of course, right there, right in the midst of it, actually, he says, in a very soft, almost crying tone of voice, he says, no se sé. No se sé, by the way, in our language, no se sé. You can say no se sim, which is, perfectly acceptable. No se sim is my grandchild. No se sim. But he said, no se sé. In our language, no se sé means my dear grandchild. That's what he said. No se sé. Oh, boo, boo, boo. He said that. Oh, boo, boo, boo. He said that that's the only one. That's what that means. So, ooh. And he said, after he says that, that's what he said. For a person to have absolute kindness and compassion to one's fellow man, that's what he said. Be purely kind and compassionate. That's how he described that. And it's still the excerpt. I guess it's yeah. We'll kind of put it into context with the two brothers, with the context into context later. So anyway, what happens is he says that, and he said, grandson, I don't even have one enemy in this world. That's what he said. Not one. That's what he says. And so, in that way, I guess it's the essence of his inner being, how he is with other people. Um, so it was those two that really made me think about and the teachings that they had. So for a moment, I thought I was going crazy because they had such polarized opinion. Huh? One is to be absolutely kind, compassionate to your fellow man. That's it, kind of thing. Why not? What's that? He said that is a, we call it spoon. Spoon is kind of like a teaching of that from that excerpt there, where they talk about if a person is in its that kind of absolute state of being, they say that a person, I guess it's like an eagle plume. An eagle plume in the summertime sometimes just lifts up by itself and goes flying in the sky, kind of thing. But if you put a few drops of something onto the eagle plume, you just keep, you know, placing a few drops. It might lift off. The eagle plume might lift off for a while, but after that weight of that will bring it back down. And we had our old people talk how they say that is yutami put. Yutami put means the soul itself is pulling something is pulling that soul back. There's different names. Some have different words for it, wandering spirit or something. It's when somebody that passes away, they can't make it. That's what they're really saying. Passes away and there's some weight. It's that they talk about a certain light light weightedness within the soul itself. It's the purity of that lightness, that holiness of its weight. It's light, very light, and it's able to lift off by itself. Within the excerpt, it talks about that and how you take care of that and how you watch over that throughout your lifetime, actually. So so what he was saying is gospel in that word itself means a person that passes like that and had that absolute in kindness, totally compassionate and kind to everyone. If he passes like that, they say that's the one they say that when he said El Pupuku, that's the only one. That one they say it just lifts, it just frees and lifts the soul. That's into its, I guess you could say ultimate destination, which is the forever beauty or the forever beauty of now, the forever now. And that some of the things they talk about within that. So it was, but still, I was believing in these two elders. Like, why do I have to believe in this one too? And I believe in this so why am I so sold on both of them? So I went back, I thought about it for a long time. So I went back to the first elder in trying to siphon some of the excerpts within the long story and knowing that there's what they call creator's prophecy, who states that very specifically how what are the ingredients for that, I guess. So I went back to him with one question based on that the teaching. And my question was to the blunt old man, to the younger brother. I asked him, "You're on a journey, aren't you?" And he knew I was coming for the basically the same question, and his eyes filled up, and he nodded his head. And yes, he said that. And he said, I want to be like him one day. That's his older brother. I want to be like him one day. I want to be the absolute of kindness and compassion and stuff. But for now, he said, even though I'm old, he said, kahit sino ay sikasin. That's that. And like said, don't be calling me a compassionate, kind elder. Say no. That's what it comes. Uh, in our language, we say when we say compassionate, kind elders, say no. So he didn't want to be called say no for the time being. That's and he kind of snapped it that way. He said, because why? I'm on that stage right now. He said, where I'm trying to control my both. He said, it's going to take me a while, but I am. He said, I'm making real hard, attempts to maintain that type of focus and absolute, to literally bump off that, I guess it's any hatred and stuff like that. Eventually, what that control does is that it actually does that. It bumps off the hatred stuff that you have for people, that kind of thing. It'll bump that off, but it's a way of your inner self, your inner well-being. How you want to do that, and I guess one of the very first devices is there to be able to actually control that hate because it's still in you. So that's what it is. So there's ways that you grab that bull by the horn and you'll know yourself. That's what he was saying. And he said you eventually bump it off. And yeah, one day, as old as I am, I'm still at that journey. But one day I want to be able to be like him. That's what he said, and that's why he was crying. He was in that lifetime journey, I guess is what it was. So it actually can get that long. It can take that long, I guess, for a person to do that very act of just maintaining it and controlling your bull, maintaining it by the horn. But for some, maybe it isn't so much, but it's just an exercise. One of the things that I found is the actual exercise things that is bigger, other than and that the essence of the aspect of kindness. I think one of the ways that I found that might be beneficial in that is just the pure learning of maybe taking an excerpt, at least parts of that excerpt within our long stories. They call it a small excerpt, but it's really quite the excerpt. Um, it's it takes to recite that excerpt from the time the sun comes up in the month of May to the time the sun is at its fastest setting point. To recite it word for word. Then our old people they call it isitiputskanyak, okay, to be able to recite that. And what it is to be able to recite or at least to know, the highlights of that would that's a long day in the month of May to be able to know the highlights of what the creator said to that first man when he when they first stepped over the parameters, the dictates and parameters of his natural law. They stepped over that. They pasta. Old people say it. You step over the pasta man. Semanto weasuewin. That's what they say. Creator's law. Pasta man. Step it over. Semanto weasuewin is his law. So from there, pasta man semanto weasuewin. Pasta who win. See, pasta who win. That's how they would say that. You're stepping over the creative master. So that's why they call it pasta when that's stepped over within the dictation parameters of his law. So what in fact is you step over there, and old people say your soul is on your own now. In other words, you're not under the protection, the shielding of this law. So that's what we talk about that when we talk about, and so that's what in our language, that's what we're talking about when we It sounds like you might have to switch to a different language, please, update so you can provide better quality transcription. Okay, I think parts of it why I do that is why I bring in keywords and stuff, and I attempt to translate them is the very learning of our language. That's the reason why I do that. I'm trying to find the most simple and concise way of how I'm going to go about doing that. To try to make sure that I'm able to do that, to get that accomplished, within the understanding of our language, and to be able to say that concept that I'm saying in English and use just one Cree word to say that. That's kind of like where I'm coming from. Certain things like a lot of the concepts that we have, like it expounds it in the English language of a definition of the term itself. It it's all condensed to one word within our language. Sometimes that happens within that a lot within the teaching concepts of our the words that the powerful words that old people, like I said, you can probably call that high, some of them high Cree, holy Cree, kind of thing. So it's within that they say it's a learning of part of that long story they call the excerpt, and that story itself is when they stepped out of the parameters of his natural law, he's seen it best fit for them to be able to administer for them, to be able to not administer but to bestow upon them uh, how to administer his teaching for the to the children that he's going to lend them. He's not going to give them he told them, I'm not going to give you these children. No, you can bear them and call them my children and that, but they're really mine. He said. And every single child that is born in the face of this earth has equal right to that type of nurturance and upbringing, because in that womb, in your womb, uspayo is what they call the womb, huh? That womb, I placed that the seed. That's that you know, the female and the female, that earliest form of conception. That's that yeah, it forms into that earliest form. So that's why they would call the earliest stage play, which is the earliest form of human. And that I placed that part of that human, he said, in its absolute balance, physical, mental, spiritual, and emotional, tipahuan, total, absolute balance. That's how I placed it upon that in its place state, the earliest form of conception. By the way, all of those different stages inside the womb, as the child is growing, all of them have the little part I in there. Right? It's like I is derived from the word "aisino," which means human. They're already human at that absolute balanced state of being earliest form that they come in. They're human already. And I only want you to, I merely want you to nurture those absolute balanced state of physical, mental, spiritual, emotional quadrants that I placed within. And you, as a parent from both, you should have to nurture that for that this child. Those are the teachings that they have. So those are. They say an understanding of that type of teaching, like that whole day in the month of May, provides for deep insights of that type of understanding. So, but even if a person can get kind of like highlights of that day, Um, Now, when you say how well, how can they do it in America today? Of course, it's absolutely cannot be done today. Today, that type of recited perfectly in synchronous your memory bank in that way. However, they did say that the first ones that he created, the first people he created, I don't know how many into succeeding generations. I don't know how many generations that succeeded that. They knew that you know the the spirit of evolution, as they would call it, they stepped over the parameters of the nature creator's natural law. That's when that's the essence of the spirit of erosion. Anything that rusts out gets old and dies is what I'm talking about. The spirit of erosion took place. So when that took place at bedtime, created. That's why he's seen it very appropriate within his dictates the parameter of how he wanted his children that he's going to let them to be raised in that absolute, merely raised in that absolute total nurturance of that balanced state of being for that child. So those are one of the things I kind of reiterate within that. So that's parts of that. So that memory bank that they have must have been enormous, enormous memory bank because it wasn't just that little excerpt there within that day in the month of May of just how to raise only one topic. How does a father and raise their son and their daughter, their child? That's the only topic that he was taught, and that takes it the whole day. Only the growing years of a child is what they're talking about. That means from that earliest form of development all the way to the age of maturity, which is adulthood for both male and female adulthood. So that's what they're talking about within that. So in stating that, the level of so it's that when so they call that small excerpt compared to that. I guess it's that level of memory bank that they were given for several generations. And they knew that this memory bank was going to erode, like I started talking about, when during the process of that deterioration process, or the when the spirit of spirit of deterioration set in. They knew that it was going to erode. We have even have a word for all of what I just said. Inihatihtawin katik. That means us in within the generations flow that the memory bank they said was going to be depleted. The memory bank is going to get shorter and shorter and shorter. And he said four times, four major cataclysms is going to take place. Because that happened, he has to renew the earth four times because he's seen it best fit for him to do that. And but the fourth and final time are these as old people say there's three major shifts, movements of this earth, cataclysms. There's three of them that took place already. They say the fourth one is coming up. Old people, some people, some others say it's right around the corner. But anyway, they say he's going to the fourth and final time he renovates the earth. They say that the memory bank is going to shrink to that point where it's not going to, it's not going to be really all that great. I guess that's one of the reasons why, within our story of the star chart that was renewed by an elder somewhere in between the turn of the century, between 17 and 1800, a renewal of that because it had to be done now in our teaching, well, our story, at least our words that I guess stabilize the story in its etymological form. That had to be in a written context also. So in order to within the our system of star charts, that's why he renewed it that time. Somewhere between somewhere between the 17 and 1800s. But anyway, that times the old people say that that time of final renovation will be the next one. The creator said the memory bank, yeah, by that time will be pretty, it's not going to be in a manner, in a very appropriately word for word text manner. Absolute, isitiputsikaniak is how you would say that. And it's absolute, orderly, perfectly, minutely chronological, chronologically, word for word sequenced order of its placement within the physical, mental, and spiritual, emotional growth of that nurturance of that child as the as this story is being flowed through the entire day. That that's what I'm talking about. The only thing that needed to be done after that, they realized that there was going to be that type of mental erosion to take place. So what happened at that time was they had to make it into a formal ceremony called Beak Squilgamic, which is the talking lodge. And it was done specifically in the month of May. They say, well, back in our, there's also the story of the month of May. Now, I know the elders, they say all these different, say even just within the Plains Cree area, we have different names for the different moons of the year, months of the year. Based on the location and the beauty of that area that they're at, and they name that moon in that fashion, which is perfect. They say, oh, people are, that's good in that way. But the old people, they also say, but just don't forget that there is actual moons within our long story. We say there's also the the essence of what those moons are based on, the creators long story, I guess, and his prophecies and all that regarding the moons themselves. So that in saying that, that's why they would call May in that long story, the month of May, the budding leaf moon. Why that is well, just a quick synopsis of that is that let's say if the records are right, if that in that last big ice age when it shifted, when it just took only a few days to shift, according to scientists or archaeologists, and they're baffled. But why did all this ice, these mountains of icebergs, and why did it only melt a few days? They're baffled. They're still baffled by, you know what? Your Muslims and Muslims know why that was. We have a specific story within the of all of that. So that, but anyway, it's within that. They tell us around that time they said the summertime and the wintertime deities got together to talk about how many moons there should be. And each one of those moons, specifically the May one, they got after the center pole. Big why? And they said, "You're the chief, people almost die there. They're dying 4 days. They're suffering. They fall over and they try to get up and try to keep praying, and they all dance around you." And they said, I'm so sorry, but I think you should have a moon too." That's what they told him, man. They kind of got after him. And you know what? He said, "Gisnöksiktikin on taatse seksaika tahtosak pagistig mo pismumna." He said, "Since you put it that way," he said, "well, then in that way that you're putting it, uh, all, we'll take all of the leaves all of the, the deities that bud leaves, that will become our moon," he said. "All of the ones, the trees, all of these different plants that bud the leaves, that will become our moon." He said, sa pag-aupis. And you know what? He didn't take all that moon to himself, because they were telling him, "No, we should have a moon too." He wanted to share that moon to all other plants that were budding, these trees that were budding their leaves. That's how kind and compassionate he was. So he shared that with all of them. All of the ones that bud their leaves is going to be our moon. That's what he said. That's how compassionate he was. So that's why in that May moon, In the long story, I'm not knocking the other ones. Don't get me wrong. Some people might try to misunderstand. No, don't try to misunderstand. It's still the long story moon. Why? Because of that. Because of Okinawa. They call that chi center would being the very first species that was created in the history of the entire world, as far as the old people have within the text of that story is concerned with. So that is why they chose that the month of May, the budding leaf, moon, the budding leaves, and the flourishing of the mind, the nurturance of the physical, mental, spiritual, emotional nurturance of the human self is part of that growth within the spiritual, the powerful essence of that budding leaf itself. It's part of that to aid in the power of that, even within its retention of that story. Well, that long, that excerpt within the long day in the month of May, and all they're talking about is raising your children as per prescribed by the Creator. Okay, so they say for a person to really come to grips with how do you take care of people? Some people are in trouble some way, somehow with their mind. They're young people get all kinds of different kinds of turmoil in many different shapes and forms that it comes. They say an understanding of that maybe even the small, even within its skeletal framework, part of that full day in the month of May, of some of the chronological orderly stages of the purity of that type of uh, 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 implanting the seeds of character, the development of human character, the purest form of human characteristics, the planting. If you even had an little understanding of that excerpt within itself, old people say it would stabilize you to then be able to make the best decisions for the people that you're serving, the children, whoever it's going to be that you have a grip on that. You've self-stabilized. You know yourself. That some of the depths of those things, and you're able to then provide the best possible nurturance for that child. So it's that type of uh, old people that they are coming in from different and that's the reason why some elders they make what seemingly is very sweeping statements of how things ought to be. And sometimes I think we just need to listen a little more carefully with those elders. What do they really mean? Maybe go dig in deeper, and find out from them, hey, I think I know. Finally, it clicks in, after maybe a certain level of even cultural protocol, going to the depths, kind of going all the way with it, so to speak, within the essence of formal cultural protocol practices and things. So they begin to really enlighten you. Because what protocol does our old people, they tell when you approach an elder with cultural protocol, it not only you can not only conceptualize all of the things that they're talking about after that cultural protocol, but you can believe in what that elder is talking about. That's the power of the old people when they tell us about certain things. So that's why they say certain areas of stabilization need to take place. And so, they say, especially like within the cultural college and stuff like that, or if you're teaching in any form of department within our people, our old people used to say, the family of the Treaty 6 family within the underlying basis of why they stabilized and why some of them are saying it was probably one, if not the most powerful treaty in the world that was ever. So based on some of the stories that I when I was mandated by the chiefs of the Treaty 6 to go and interview about a 5-year period the oldest elders in the Treaty 6 area to try to find out what happened in 1876 when they smoked that pipe, what was said and who was there, that kind of thing. So those types of, and opposed to what was said there by our people, our traditional people, as opposed to what's written now in the document in Ottawa, where it says we ceded, we surrendered, relinquished, we gave up Mother Earth. That's what they're saying in that document. But when I interviewed within, it's all recorded now, in audiovisual recording, the excerpts of what it was that they were saying in that text. They were saying we are a family that based everything on that long story, where those people from generations past that got us to that point, and we have our own ways of how we looked at how we did went about why we made, like I say, such sweeping statements in 1876, seemingly. But things like, sorry, Mother Earth is non-negotiable. Statements like that, a guy named Sasagwaps back in that day jumped up and he just said, you can pile all your money, your dollar bills, all the way from here, all the way to the place that you came from over there. You still won't pay for our mom. We can cover this whole this trout cloth, the expensive cloth that you have, this whole island. You still will never be able to pay for it. That's how he talked about it. So he's really saying, sorry, our mother is not for sale. And then when you say concepts of Mother Earth too, it's totally different from our concept and the concept from them. The others, the people that came from the visitors from, we call it, the old people call them visitors from the other side of the world. Their concept of Mother Earth is like, on TV, sometimes you see these very different things, that statements. I always talk about that. And that is, they say, Mother Nature this and Mother Nature that, that kind of commercials or whatever. But with us, when we say mother, that's our mom. She is a living being. She's a living deity. And the teachings that derive from her is we don't only pray to our mom, Mother the Earth. You know what? We try to comfort her too. We pray for her. We don't pray to her, we pray for her too. And we try to comfort her with our prayer. That the teachings of our old people, the oneness of how we view her, as a living being, as opposed to over there, like that when they smoked that pipe. Some of the accounts that the old people had, there was a man sitting across from an elder, and that one of those generals was smoking that pipe, and he was reading that general's mind, and that old man, he was saying that instead of uh, talking about the foundational, powerful essence of this pipe and what it stood for, instead of thinking about things like that, this general, when he was smoking that pipe, that old man was reading him right through. That old man was reading that general. He's in his mind. He was thinking, how am I going to get at that land? Smoking that pipe that way. But that's what I mean. These old people, they had things within that physical, mental, spiritual, and emotional aspects of things that were in absolute balance. That's why they were able to perform such feats as that. Why? Because it's not like today's educational system, they have physical, uh, the mental and emotional, right? And they kind of more or less threw spirituality out the window. Although there are some institutions that bring in spirituality too, but predominantly they said they threw it out the window. But so you only have these three. What about the spiritual? With us, especially the Plains Cree people, well, I know with indigenous people throughout the island, pretty much the same. And spiritual is always a part of our discussion. It doesn't matter, no matter which way out you want to look at it, however way you're trying to find a way out of it and try to look at it from a purely different perspective. they compartmentalize it in whatever way, shape, or form you want to hold. People say it's always intertwined. The spirituality aspect is also always interconnected and intertwined with whatever our elders are saying. That's what the old people say. That's why it's all become that integral essence of that physical, mental, spiritual growth, foundational development of that human being to be a part of that balanced growth. So and it's an understanding of that. I guess you embrace that thought and the many different within that teachings of that talking lodge that takes a hold. Now, it ended up, they knew that it was going to, they would have to specifically do it in a certain way. So they had to divvy that up into four equal parts. So in order to do that, it'll be the old people call it the four stages of only human growth alone. Just the growing years of a child from conception to adulthood, to the first stage of adulthood. Right there, it's the growth, only the growing years of that child. And that's all they're talking about. And so it's that they had to divide it into four equal parts within that teepee. Teepee facing east in the month of May, the first elder, as you enter the door, he sits when you're entering, you'll be sitting on your left side. So it's the door pole, the two door poles, the one that's the south side door pole. Right there, there's an elder that sits right there. He divvied it up to four elders there in the four cardinal directions station. The east elder right there. And if you count from that door pole, right from where he sits, one, two, three, four is the actual southern door pole. That's where another elder sits. And so that's the second phase of that divvied up day within the month of May. So, and then you count from right where he sits, the southern elder, that pole directly behind. You count from there, one, two, three, four. Again, this time it's the elder that's sitting directly across the door, that pole behind him. So he's sitting on the west side. So he's doing the third phase of that child's growth developmental years that he's talking about. And it's, like I said, very orderly words, structured manner. So, and then from that pole, where you say, you go from, you count from there again, one, two, three, four, and it's the western, the northern elder there, sitting there, and talks about the fourth and final phase of how does a father and a mother properly nurture in its absolute purity to a point where they got their child to be absolutely in a state of open-mindedness and open-heartedness, but a very stable open-minded and open heart. So it's stable within itself. In other words, you're not growing up with a tunnel vision that by the time they get to that stage, they only see something in a very tunnel state of perception. Tunnel vision. It's a wide open vision, but a state and being of eternal learning, if you want. How do you put yourself into that level of being where you're actually prepared and matured into eternal learning? See, that's the kind of state and welfare that the child, the developmental stability, strength of that human being to be able to stand on their 2 feet and to be able to walk. That's why from there, that elder, they walk right out into the world. They open that. It's like, that's the stages from that last elder all the way to the door. They walk out with that. They're able to walk with it. So those are traditional meanings behind and just surface kind of stuff about that lodge. We're not trying tell you, how do you do this and that within that, the spiritual aspects of it. That's for it's like a me to try and teach about the Sundance Lodge. No, it's we can tell the surface, how it kind of looks from the outside and that kind of thing, or a little bit on the, but that's it. We can't specify the actual, it's a ceremonial stage of learning is what that is. That's what, and that requires cultural protocol. But this surface thing is just enough for people to be able to see and understand that, hey, yeah, we actually had something in place before contact. We have our own, what do you call, just within the mental capacity, our own psychological stages of development within the very earliest conception to the fullest of maturity state of a person, of a growing person. We have all that within the psychological order of sequence of development. We have those teachings. We had them before contact. We knew how to raise children before contact. Within that circular essence of the circular encampment, everybody was within that same kind of a wavelength. Why? They had 4 phases of even just the long story, which is way bigger than this one. Intro version, East TP, 4 days, 4 nights. Southern version, that same long story, 16 days, 16 nights general version. The Western TP, we would say a TP of circular encampment of 1,000 people is what I'm talking about. The Western encampment, the 64 days, 64 nights, smooth, orderly flow, word for word, using descriptive language form. So that's your third TP, and that's the long story. And then your fourth version, fourth and final, but the ceremonial version of that same story. So it gets bigger each time. The fourth version takes straight 4 months. For that, so it's no wonder everybody within that circular encampment was in the same wavelength. People. So there's sayings that trickle down to this generation from that circular encampment. One of the slogans that trickled down from that time was, it takes a whole community to raise a child. Why? Because everybody at that time was in the same wavelength to this, that even just that small 1 full day excerpt within the month of May, how do you raise children? Everybody was in the same wavelength. That's why people knew what they had to do in stabilizing each other within that community. That's why you had that chief in there, and everybody lived equidistant from that chief's heart. And our old people, the name prior to Muniaote, no, they call Muniaochenas, they call a village. Muniaochenas, they call it, white man town, or, towns that were created right by the river or wherever, little villages. And towns, they call them Muniaochenas. That's what they call them. And then the cities, they finally call them Muniaoteno. See, they've always put that Munia in front of it. Muniaochenas is Muniaochenas, Muniaoteno. Muniao. But prior to Muniao coming here, you know what it was called that time? A circle encampment? Ute no. Ute no. A circle encampment. Ute. The center chief of that circular encampment, the guy in the middle, his heart would have to be big enough to everybody that lives equidistance from him. They have a word for it. It's a Cree word. You take na mo ute, his heart. You take it means everybody had equidistance to his heart. You take na mo ute. That's why they call it ute no. So those derivatives from those words are even, it's all open. Old people, they said, now, one old man, 121-year-old man, he said, our language is just like a book. If you know the essence of old people say, the word itself, that means the very essence of ituinika, taken go to, the etymological aspect of our language, the affixed etymological foundational aspect of our language. If you know that, it's just like a book. You open the book and you start reading that book. Why? You know the etymology of your language. That's why. That's how long. That's how much you've grasped your language. You've actually entrenched with the etymology. So you know the story. You know the long story. That's how he placed it in that context for. But you see, you have to know the language into that depth in order to the descriptive language. Now, there's a difference again too. It's not like a made-up language over here plus a descriptive language. My 105-year-old grandpa said, "There's not a thing in the whole world." That can whether it's a function through its function or its description of that item, or both its functionality or description of that item, that we wouldn't have a word for it. If we have a word literally for everything within our what they call the foundational based descriptive language that that we were given by the creator, that we're able to describe everything just using by just using the language. So that's the form. I guess the old people sometimes they go to different levels, they say, of how you can further understand certain things. And those are some of the techniques of oral tradition in maintaining the oral traditional aspect of it. So I just wanted to give you, oh, here's the other thing too within that, that the two elders that we began talking about. Well, both elders, they said this, they said that, especially the older elder, they said that, well, they both pretty much put the same thing. And that was, if a person comes right up to me and tells me something, if it's true what they're saying, all I can do is thank that person. That's what they said. Maybe even encourage that person. It's better than talking, uh, talking in my back somewhere, going around talking, backstabbing me or whatever. It's better than that. It encourage them. But you actually took the time to come in front of me to tell me the truth about me of certain things. Thank you. You must have a lot of care for me. You must have that much compassion and care for me to be able to do that for me. Thank you. Encourage them. They tell them, but the same old man again with both of them, they have their ways of saying it, but I like the younger elder expressing this next part. He says, if a person if a person wants to come in front of me and tell me something that wasn't true about me, I'd let them finish first. After they finish, that thing, what they have to say about me, he said, I will let them finish. And after that, I'll only speak once in a normal tone of voice, soft tone of voice on that subject. And I'll tell them why it's not, how I stand in that subject that they brought. How do I stand? And if that isn't true, and that I'm only going to only speak once. But after that, if they continue to harbor, they just, no, this guy's wrong. Or this is, he's in a nice way, he's telling you you're a liar, maybe, that kind of thing. So I'll only speak once. He said that the controlling mechanism again. You want to burst out, but he said in a mild way, he said, "Oh, you're just lying." But in another avenue where he's really telling you you're a liar. So what do? You keep your mouth closed. So people say, "Why?" It's not your feelings. Those are his feelings. That's the difference. There's a difference between your feelings and that person. Those feelings belong to him. That's what old people. They're not yours. So just you thought you already said it once in a soft tone and level-headed manner. That's good enough. Old people say that. But so those are the teachings from the people too. And they say don't hear the talk from the side too. Somebody comes up to, hey, guess what so and so said about you? Here's what they said. Like, don't listen to that. What, shrug it off. as they say, it's going to eat away on you, well, because you're taking it in. Shut it off. It's, but like that, like they said, if someone comes in front of my face and tells me the truth, thank them. If it's not true, once, speak only once, how you stand on it. And if they continue to call you them, it's their feelings. Let it be. They're not you. But here's one thing you can do for that person, I was told. And that's again leaving that older elder I was telling you. That's his way of doing things. He said it once. He was called a liar. So what did he do? Person walks away like that. What do you do for a person like that? Pray for that person in this way. That's what he said. How would I want somebody to pray for me if I was in the same shape, state, and condition as he was? What would I? How would I want somebody to pray for me? Creator and the most kind, compassionate, gentle, even your name, compassionate, kind God, it could dawn on that person gently, softly, gently, on that person that life is not the way that he perceives it. Life is the way that you perceive it to be. Let it dawn on that person like that of how life really is. So that is so good that elders say that. Oh, that's what old people are saying within the long story. It's guiding principles. So I just wanted to leave that little bit of message to you that way. But it's just, I guess it's getting to know a little bits of that long, like that excerpt of that raising children. So the purity of the purest approach in the human developmental processes prior to contact based on the long story, our creation story. So I'll just leave you with that message, and I hope you've gotten a little bit out of this. I really appreciate, cherish all your lending me your wonderful ears. So you guys have a good day. Have a wonderful day. Me.